So as you probably did a little bit of studying, you'll see that here in the Mountain West, we've got a completely different climate than just, 350 miles down south. We've got a gentleman with us, Ross Laubscher, and a few St. George guys here. He's going to mention real quick his soil temps and the amount of water they get annually, and you'll see the drastic changes. I'm going to unmute Ross real quick, and I think this will shock you. Ross, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, Ross, why don't you tell them a little bit about your area?
Yeah, so I mean, we see soil temperatures up around, and that's probably about 3 inches down. We see soil temperatures right around 95. I mean, that's middle of the day, middle of the summer, and then our water. Well, we get 8 inches a year. Most of that's during the winter months. So the name of the game is irrigation. What we find is a little bit, listening in this morning, is that a lot of our watering during this time, well, it's going to be almost 100 degrees here today. So we're not going to talk about, this time of year, but actually, in February, March, we're watering basically for playability, right? So we know that turf will last and maybe go off a little off color or whatever, but we're mainly concerned about how that's playing for members, and that's where we were probably up to about a week and a half ago when we started getting 75, 85 degrees here. So
hot and dry, and you're hot right now. So that's a desert climate you're describing, isn't it, Ross?
Oh yeah, it's a Southwest, I mean, very similar to Scottsdale.
Right. Okay. So I've been visiting Sean Emerson and Kenton and the guys down there. So that's an area of the country that I'm just starting to learn about. But for sure, now, do you have primarily cool season grasses or cool season greens, warm season, everything else?
We're primarily cool season. So right now we're ryegrass fairways, bluegrass, ryegrass rough.
Bentgrass greens.
Bentgrass greens. Yeah.
Yes. So how but bentgrass greens are perfect under those soil temperatures when you can keep it dry. See, the problem that bentgrass has with soil temperatures when it gets warm like that, in my opinion, is like in St. Louis, where it's 95 degrees and 30% volumetric water content in a sand-based green. And now you've got lack of oxygen, lack of ability to cool that root zone, and the heat stress as well. So, listen, growing grass in an arid environment, if you ask a person like me from the cool, humid, won't stop raining Northeast, I'd take growing grass where you are any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And as long as you're getting some winter water, do you have a challenge keeping up with the way you like to water, Ross? Or really your uniformity and the wind and your precision in doing it is all good?
Well, we're actually doing a renovation this fall. So part of that is getting a new irrigation system. So, I mean, originally you could say that the irrigation system a little underbuilt for what you would like. And we're going to get huge improvement out of the new spacing. We're looking at, almost 10 to 20% water savings just, overnight. And that's not, and that's if we were to keep the same turf.
Okay, so that was my next question. Why on earth wouldn't you go to something else other than, I've been a fan of Kentucky bluegrass fairways. I think in your neck of the woods, maybe they can work. I guess I've seen them work, maybe not in the desert, but doesn't blue and rye use a ton more water than creeping bentgrass? I mean, is bentgrass an option for your fairways in your renovation, or are you going back to the ryegrass?
We're kicking it around, but right now we're leaning towards bentgrass fairways, and we're leaning towards a golf course design that is probably 90% low cut, 80 to 90% lower cut.
What'd you get? Gil Hansen Doak to come around there or something?
David McClay Kidd.
Okay, yeah, one of those guys. They like shaving everything.
So it'll be a lot of bent grass. But that's kind of where we are. We started with bluegrass and kind of ended up bent grass because of a lot of that came back to establishment. And where we felt like that the establishment period and the amount of sod with the bluegrass was really going to be, well, first of all, up front difficult, and then even long term, I think the bent grass from a water saving standpoint is going to be huge.
And I'll just add that you know, I'm not a fan of bentgrass fairways in my neck of the woods or even north, and that's not a conventional opinion. And I base it on one fact. It's really hard to manage large areas of bentgrass if it grows unabated and you can't manage organic matter. I think that is one of the major drawbacks. Now, in your neck of the woods where you can keep it dry, and what we're learning about growth and clip volume is we can dial growth to the kind of traffic we want. You know, growth should match your traffic, period. That's the way you should be feeding it. Every time you feed something like bentgrass a drop more than it needs, it's going towards supporting some sort of organic matter, especially when there'll be excess growth produced, when you get warm and wet. And I would imagine, Ross, every time you irrigate to a certain extent, you must get a little bit of a surge in growth because the soils are warm enough that a little bit of moisture will kick in some growth. So I do think bentgrass can be a great surface. It's a more fun surface when you shave it around the greens. And if we're going to get a lot of crappy golfers who are going to want to play our courses for fun, maybe more people will take up the game. I think the direction they're taking with shaving these areas can be better. I debate whether it's going to be less maintenance, Ross. You're having to now, how much bentgrass acreage are you talking about having that's going to be, you know, under, you know, at a half an inch or less?
Right. So probably right in that 50 to 60 acres. Yeah. So it's going to be a lot. I agree on the end of, I think we kind of go from more of a chemical budget and guys on sprayers and stuff like that, and lean more to guys on top dressers and guys on verticutters, you know. So probably a lot of sand, you know, and minimal inputs on the in and water, hopefully, right?
Well,
so.
and I got to tell you, you know, I was down at Desert Mountain and saw that golf course that Nicholas has 2 greens on every hole except 3 greens on the 18th hole. Is that Renegade? One of the golf courses down there. And they went wall-to-wall cool season grass on that golf course. And I saw bentgrass growing on some beautiful sand, coarse sand in the fairways. And I think, Ross, I don't know how you guys are doing the underlying material and what your soils are there, but I can tell you, I'm just finished involvement with the Frisco, Texas project with Gil and Jim. The PGA of America is building this new golf course outside of Dallas for their headquarters. And, you know, I don't know why they just couldn't find a better piece of land, but they found a crappy piece of land that's requiring some level of sand capping. And I was vehemently opposed to a foot cap. I've never seen that work effectively. And Michael Woods and I were working on a golf course in Thailand together recently, and we suggested very thin layers of very coarse sand to start and plant into, and then top dress it so that it roots into what's underneath. And then, you know, you build up a little soil above 4 or 5 inches, depending on how big the profile needs to be to make the soil work, the kind of sand that you're doing. And right now that seems to be able to be done without having to build a big cap and using coarser, more concrete sand. But I may be shooting my mouth off, Ross. What are you working on out there?
Well, you described exactly what we're going to do is, and that's not doing a cap. It's the latter of what you described, because I believe the same thing is that we can get that sand over time is going to do us a lot better than being 8 inches deep and I never get to see it. Right. So,
right.
and my organic layer never gets to see that, or thatch layer. So that's the plan, is to be aggressive with top dressing and those things, and plant this on the native that's here. So.
Hey, I'm going to interject here, Fred.
Yeah. Sorry.
Pat knows a little bit about wall-to-wall bent, and might add a couple things of what he's dealing with in a completely different climate, dry but completely different. Pat, your 2 cents?
Yeah, I'll jump in and see what you guys think. We're different in so much as we're bent fairways, Nicholas course, tight soils, basic soils. But really, we've kind of got the other way, just from what we're able to do and everything else. The idea in the beginning was to top dress anything, get your 40 tons a year down, all the kind of stuff we had talked about. That's just not realistic for us. So we've had to go to a extremely minimalist approach in the fairway. If our fairways get a 1/4 pound of applied in a year, that's a lot. We have to almost try to grind the thatch and organic matter accumulation out. Rolling Ross is a huge deal for bent fairways. And that's what we've seen. We have to control our organic matter, or we're just in a world of hurt. And if you put down a 1/2 pound of in too much, if you went out there with a granular app on our fairways, they'd be done for 2 years. You just can't do it. So if you can stay dry, if you can put enough traffic on the fairways, if you can put down virtually no nitrogen, we've found that you can make bent grass fairways work in this climate without having to go to the 40 ton an acre kind of year top dressing rates, which really becomes labor and cost prohibitive. So we can make it work, but it really is touchy and temperamental, and it can really get away from you in a hurry if you're not doing those things. Growth regulators are huge. Work with out of Nebraska and Minnesota, we're looking at 500 growing degree days, give or take, with trim it. We mow our greens a little higher, so maybe we can get 325 on those. So it's really interesting how it's kind of changed in this environment with 95 during the day, 98 kind of days and not much rain. So bent grass is great, but it can be a total train wreck if it gets, one app of some fertilizer and it's done. So you just got to be careful with it, is our experience anyway.
Well, let me add, I got to tell you, you brought something up that's a real, there's a couple of things on my mind that I think are sort of progressive, and if we figure out how to do them, I think are going to be important tools for us. One is rolling. If I had bent grass, I would buy the biggest roller I could find and roll every single piece of bent grass I owned as many times during the week as I could without killing the grass where I turn. To me, it's unequivocal that if you've got halfway decent soils, right? Halfway decent soils, or any kind of sand at the surface, where you can get away with it, there's no question about the benefits to playability, defense activation, disease resistance, water management, organic matter management. What I think we have most of our problems with is when we have too much growth and not enough wear and tear. And so what the rolling does is it makes a more uniform application of wear and tear that sort of tamps down some of that growth and uses it for recovery or for defense rather than using it for organic matter accumulation. So big shout to using rolling. The second is